I'm Chris Finley, and today I'm going to talk about Spirit Empowered Church for our Spirit Empowered Church class. So, I've got 4 points, and each one of them has to do with being a Spirit Empowered Church. The first point is, if you want to see God move, you have to move. In other words, it's about changing your perspective. And so for this, I was using David Platt, and he's got every disciple making disciples, and I think that's kind of critical. David tells of different stories. A couple of them were amazing in Cuba, but how all these people had were the people of God, the Spirit of God, and the Word of God, and they were just multiplying like crazy. And he even asked him, like, "How'd you do that?" And if I remember, this kind of older gentleman pastor simply said, like, "We're just making disciples," which makes a lot of sense because that's exactly how they were doing it in Acts. And so, making disciples in his video inevitably leads to making more churches. It inevitably leads to God moving, because wherever God's people are, God is moving. That's where he's going to be doing the action. So the second part was empowerment over motivation. I hear a lot about people at times, for work or play or different things. They'll say, I can't find motivation. Well, in some ways, motivation isn't something you find; it's something you do. But empowerment, that's different. That's not something you do. And so Christina Kane in section 6, she points out, act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly. So that's the how, to do it. How do we act empowered? But she even goes on to explain it even more, that it's far more than just about compassion or empathy. She says that the church gets confused between those, being empathetic and feeling for somebody, and compassion being an action, something you do. So she says those who are empowered by the Spirit, it gets better and better, and they are renewed. Isaiah actually says that. God says that in Isaiah. And being renewed like that, you don't ever grow tired of it. You don't grow weary. You want more. You want to help God more and do more. And she says in that sort of thing, he gives us the ability to take our weaknesses and the harm of the past, that trauma, and he can change it from us saying, I can't do anything because of this, to I can do something because of this, because what God did with this. Third, if you want to see a miracle, and this is my favorite subject part, if you want to see a miracle, you need to be at a place where you need a miracle. This is actually not from this section. This is actually from AG History, but it's so relevant that I had to bring it in. So you want to look it up. It's in section 4 of AG History Missions. Joe Gordon talks on this, and Joe tells us wonderful story about his past and how God saved him, and through him God saved his family. And I mean, it's really gripping already. But it doesn't even stop there. He goes to this village. They pray for a man who has a paralyzed arm. The guy can raise his arm over his head at that point. Not only that, but he goes to a village where everybody's sick. A military communist police officer says, "Don't come in here. It's a quarantine zone." He says, "Oh, I got medicine." Turns out it's just holy oil. And so he prays and anoints everybody. They all get healed. And just miraculous kind of stuff happens, which would be really good. But he asks a really important question: why do we not see that power? And he answers that, and because you don't need to. We have doctors, we have all these other things that God uses people to help other people, and that's a fact of how he does things, right? Disciples making disciples. But he says, put yourself in the position in which confirmation of who Jesus is and what his power is, and Jesus will show his power. The power of God is meant to be a sign to all nations that he is who he says he is. So lastly, this one I kind of came up a little bit myself on this idea of take responsibility for the ministry. So this is different from the first one, which is perspective. This is now that you know these kind of things, what do we do? How do we, take that upon ourselves? How do we say, yes, I'm in? So, and this comes from Mike Winger, which I love this guy. He's a list kind of guy. He's analytical. That's, I love that. I like that kind of thing. Very, very pungent. But he says a priesthood of all believers, and he's going to explain that. And if you cut up some of it, I'm just going to go to the heart of it. He says, what is that? Well, the function of a priesthood that Christ and Peter explains to us is that we are to offer acceptable sacrifices, spiritual sacrifices to God through Jesus Christ. What is that? Okay, well, one, we're to draw near to the Father. That's what that was. Priests were for, and not only that, but we can only do that through Jesus. He is the high priest. There's no longer any high priest. There's no temple anymore. So that's got to be who it is. Second, that's preaching the gospel, making disciples. Third, we shall offer our bodies in service to Him. That's helping anybody, anywhere, anytime. And the idea of sacrifice means it costs us something. Worship, but it's not just worship because I like the song. It's worship. We can worship when and where we want, but not how we want. And not only that, it's worshiping when we are in a bad mood, when we don't feel like it. It should be taken seriously because God takes it seriously, and it is for Him. And the last one I think is the most powerful is prayer. Prayer is our job, our part of our ministry to pray, and that's all believers. So all disciples made are to pray. Mike Winger says, James says Elijah was a man just like us. And if that's true, and Elijah did amazing things by talking to God, praying to God, then we can do that too. You just got to put yourself in the right position. You got to have the right attitude, and you got to be serving Him and absolutely leaning on Spirit for the power that's needed. It sounds easy, but often this is what's complicated for us. But that is a quick reference of how you can make disciples, that make churches, that make empowered people for Christ. Till next time.